Try to honor folks' time and get started. I'm going to have Gillian just sort of set the stage for us, and then we'll do introductions. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so welcome. I'm Gillian Fuqua. I'm the principal here at Doty. I'm also a member of the configuration committee. And we're here tonight as this is a meeting of the configuration committee. I want to make sure that we're clear that this is not a school board meeting. We have school board members who are here. They're here to listen and also be able to, well, now that we had some computer issues, Natasha's actually going to be taking notes instead of me. But to also be able to come back as a whole board and reflect upon what they heard and bring in things that may or may not have been captured in the notes. So just always asking the general thing. I have the same expectations for families that I do for students, and that we communicate in a polite and respectful manner, understanding that there might be different opinions in the room. This is not about determining right or wrong. This is about hearing and getting feedback to the questions that were designed by the communication subcommittee of the configuration committee to get some feedback on the models. Everybody in the district is being asked the same questions. So we can then present the board with as sort of representative data as we can. Just a little walkthrough of the handouts that we have here. This first one on the sort of on the cardstock is a one-page flyer that was prepared that just talks about some of the current realities and the principles and what were some of the criteria that the configuration committee looked at when we looked at models. The one that looks like this is just a printout of the questions, which we'll also have on the PowerPoint, but for some people this might, be handier for this. And then this honestly is something that I just put out here honestly at the last minute. So it's a little bit abbreviated. This is the Doty enrollment projections based on Worcester birth records that as reported in the town report. So for the kindergarten numbers, those are the children who will be 5 by September 1st of 2026. So look at 2020 birth rates and 2021 birth rates. Like for example, the kindergarten number for next year, the district we have a number of 2. The town report has a number of 3. What I did not do is I haven't cross-referenced to find out who may have moved. So this is just based on that, and then what it does is moves everybody up a grade so you can see the progression. So I'm going to step back and let other folks introduce themselves.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Deborah Bloom, and I am a member of the configuration committee. I came onto the configuration committee in July because the previous town representative on the committee needed to step down. I have 2 kids at Doty. I have a 2nd grader and a 5th grader. I've lived in the community for about 15 years. Prior to that, I grew up and went to school and lived in Montpelier, and then went and did all my things in the rest of the world for a while and came back. So I was, some of you may remember me, I was pretty involved in these conversations last year as well. So I just want to take a moment to recognize that we've talked about this before. We've had these conversations before. I don't know how to work this forward.
But do you want me to advance?
Okay. I think it's just important to recognize that. And we're asking the community to have this conversation again. So I thank you all for coming back and being involved. We also are at a different place in time, and so that's part of, I want to just acknowledge my kind of progression through this as well as part of my introduction, and then I'll pass it off to Michaelan, is that what I see now from the state perspective and the landscape that's changing across our state, what's happening in our legislature, and then also the reality of our decreasing class sizes. And so those are just were two really salient points for me through this process as I got to kind of where I am now as part of this configuration committee. Pass it off to Michaelan for introduction.
I'm Michaelan Gary LeClaire. I've largely lived in Worcester for 35 years, minus a handful here and there. So I went to Doty. My two girls, Rosemary's now in 32 in 9th grade, now in 4th grade here at Doty, and I am a school board member.
Could you speak up just a little, please?
Yeah, sorry. Have been on the school board for maybe 4 years now. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I tend to lose my voice. So yeah, I just want to reiterate what Deborah said, configuration committee. I actually was kind of on the first round configuration committee and then not on this current round until the fall. I took over because there was a scheduling conflict with our other school board rep from Worcester. So I think I attended maybe 2 meetings in full transparency, but followed along as a school board member prior to that. And yeah, I also wanted to recognize that there are a lot of strong feelings about this, myself included, and it might seem like we're having the same conversation again and again, but I truly think things have changed, not just with the state, but within the district, and also within you'll see the proposals are different. So hopefully you'll see that it's not just the same conversation again tonight. And I just want to say, hopefully I know we're all here because we love Worcester and we love Doty and we love our students and we want the best for them. And I know that there can be multiple truths in the room, and I hope we just keep in mind that we all truly care so deeply about this community.
Hello, I'm Natasha Eckhart. I am a member of the school board, and I am here to take notes. The end.
You also.
I did go to Doty. I was on the first flag up there. And my son was here in 6th grade, and now he's at U32 as a sophomore. And yeah. Julia?
I'm Julia Hewitt, and I'm taking notes too. I didn't know I needed to sit up front.
Okay. It's good to have a note takers in different places so that all the years are assigned, right? So I tried to put this together in a way that will flow us towards the questions that we want to answer and give a little bit of background, kind of how we got here. So we'll do a little bit of a walkthrough. Some of what I have on the slides you also have on the pieces of paper because I didn't know that everything would be printed, so I put it in a couple different places. But we'll just walk through a little bit of that, and then really the heart of this meeting is the questions. So we'll walk through those questions and give folks a chance to respond. So this mimics what, similar to what Gillian presented, which was just for Doty. Sorry, can you not see?
We can't read that.
Yeah. Can I make this bigger? Yeah. How's that? Better? Better? Yeah, a little better. So this is the projection with 6th grade moving to U32 of what Doty, the students at Doty could potentially be next year. As Gillian said, there's a couple of things that are slightly different from the numbers she pulled because her numbers are from the town report. the district's numbers look at who's moved, who's shifted, so there's a little bit of reconciliation that would need to be done there, but they're very close. So what you see is next year, we're looking at 2 kindergarten students enrolling in Doty. So when we talk about declining numbers and we talk about that changing and continuing, that then has that kind of waterfall effect of the continuing years. So this is what 6th grade moving to U32, Doty would look like potentially next year, numbers-wise. And this comes from the memo that Stephen and the administration put together in the original configuration memo. So just like big picture, what we were looking at as we were, this is not a full screen. Sorry, y'all. We're low tech, you know, we're trying. So the configuration committee was tasked with this process, and we were asked continually to be guided by the strategic plan. I'm not going to go into all those details right now. That's not the intent of this meeting, but I'm sure that Stephen and the administration would dive into that if you ask questions. And just to be focused throughout our process on our shared values and student-centered learning. The root of what we were looking at this through too is the access and sustainability. And I think that's a really, for me, again, an important point in this process is to really think about what's the most sustainable process. How can we as a community have as much agency in what happens here within our community? And that's a lot of what I was thinking about through this process. And what's the most sustainable? What do we don't want this to be something that is forced upon us. I think we do have an opportunity to be really engaged, and then what happens if Doty is closed, if it comes to that, we have an opportunity to be involved in what happens with this building and what we as a community want to make and create in this space. Do you have anything you want to add in there? No? Great. So again, this is just pulled, you all have this in your slide or in your papers. I know the reason I pulled particularly this second picture is the other piece that is incredibly important to me, and I think more importantly to our students, is to understand that we have been really intentional and continually reminding the administration that we're not merging with Grundy. That's not what's happening. We want to create, if this process moves forward, it's about creating a new school. It's about creating a new community that is inclusive of 2 towns. So I thought, I just want to give kudos to finally the administration really, I think, heard that, and that's reflected to me in this graphic. This is Worcester and Middlesex creating a school and a new community school, potentially.
What would you say the name would be?
I have no idea.
So that would be something that I also have been really vocal about in terms of this is not just a matter of a merge or one school absorbing another. It's a matter of 2 schools closing and reopening as a reimagined new school. And if I were to get everything that I wanted, but it would be that the name would be there would be a community generation process for the name. There would be community involvement into what's the mascot, what are the school colors, what is the shape and the vision of that new building going to be? Can you go back one slide though? Just I think one thing, I think the up arrow. So one thing that I want to just point out, because one of the things that I think, and we don't have time to go in it, I just want to give this one example, and as we kind of move through the process more, we'll get into more detail, but it was interesting timing in terms of the receipt of the email, because we're starting to plan the basketball season. And first you have the kind of larger issue that Berlin and East Montpelier both have rec committees that sponsor, but then it's also pay to play. But the thing is none of the three schools of Rumney, Doty, Calais are able to put together a whole team, a whole basketball team. And so looking at even just basketball teams, we're looking at potentially having to group 3 schools to form a basketball team. And then that creates barriers to participation because Calais, while it's not geographically far away, it is actually far away when it comes to getting there. So these are things that we're really starting to struggle with and see. And in terms of, as we look at sort of sustainability and opportunities for kids, this is just one that just came across my desk yesterday morning, and I was like, well, a bigger school could make a basketball team that would be at the school that everybody could participate in. And I just wanted to throw that out there because I think sometimes it's good. We are thinking, that's part of my purpose for being on the configuration committee this time was to really kind of drive those more concrete discussions of what are we actually talking about when we're talking about increased opportunities. And there was one that just crossed my desk yesterday.
All right, so Gillian addressed some of this in her introduction. We're here to have a conversation. There's no right or wrong answers. There are probably differing opinions within the room. And as McKellen said, we just ask that folks are respectful of one another's opinions and respectful of folks' time as well, and recognizing that some of us talk a lot and some of us don't. So if you are somebody who talks a lot, just try to also remember to step back and give space for other folks that may also want to respond to some of the questions. I don't know about you, but I turn into a pumpkin at 8:30, so we do have a finite amount of time as far as right now, but the last time we'll have a conversation. All right, so I have, all the questions didn't show up on one slide, but we'll kind of tick through them.
Is everyone clear what the proposal is that's on the table?
Just remind me.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it would be moving 6th grade across the district up to 32 to create a really robust middle school program, grades 6 through 8. And then it would be, as Gillian said, kind of closing Doty and Rumney and rebirthing a beautiful new school in the combined communities.
And doing the same, so it would be, I'm referring to them as 3 regional elementary schools.
Yes, right, I was going to say
Okay,
too.
sorry.
And closing Calais and East Montpelier and rebirthing a new school there.
So physically it would be in Middlesex, correct?
It would
Yes.
physically be in Middlesex. I believe, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that they did look at the feasibility of it being here, but this building cannot accommodate that many students. Is that correct? Yes.
But it's not going to be a separate building project outside of the Rumney and Doty buildings. We're not proposing another.
No. We don't have the budget for that.
Rebranding is
We're not
different than
actually like
rebuilding,
demolishing
right?
the building.
Yeah. So it's rebranding, it's recreating, and yes, it would be in that physical,
be
the
at
physical
Rumney.
wood space.
It would be in that,
Would-
yes,
in that
on that
building.
campus, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The building is located in the town of Middlesex, yes. So
And I mean,
similarly-
again, I want to just reiterate before we get into the nitty gritty, I know we've talked about such things for a couple of years, and we have heard and taken the feedback to heart. For example, the discussion last year, a lot of what was discussed was not wanting to separate siblings, not wanting to move kids back and forth, pre-K and K and 1. And this model would keep siblings together pre-K through 5 and then this is just the normal transition to 32. And it wouldn't have the back and forth between schools. So that's just one example of how, like, you know, we did really try to incorporate what was important in this model, along with some of the realities of all the other things.
Does anybody have any questions about that before we dive into like logisticy questions?
How much does this work into the state, what they're doing, or they're not doing?
Well, so the state's timeline is the state's redistricting committee is tasked with presenting at least 3 potential models to the legislature in January. The legislature is supposed to do something and decide on one of those models, which wouldn't actually happen until school year 28, 29. So if the state does this, it could play into that, but I don't think that, frankly, we rely on the state doing anything. What we're thinking about and looking at here is the reality of our district. And there are multiple things happening on different layers. Like, I think we all know that the school board has had a conversation with Montpelier about potentially merging our 2 districts. There's conversations sometimes about including Barry or Twinfield into that. So there are a lot of layers to this. However, I think my perspective is we need to decide what we're doing in our communities and what's best for our communities now and in the not so distant future, and then have those conversations as they arise. I don't think we rely on the city doing anything right now. We don't know what it's going to be.
Do you guys have more you want to say before we start talking about this?
I just wanted to know if there are any logistical questions, and then, yeah, we'll go into kind of the guided questions that we have. So if anybody has anything that they want to add, we should do it now. Yeah.
And so logistically, I'm just wondering, how full would the Rumney building be if the population of Worcester started to grow again? Or if it turned out that we were actually
I don't know if I have that
more
up.
kids?
Right.
So,
the population of Middlesex is also declining,
Right.
and nationwide birth rates are also dropping. I think it's an inaccurate assumption to think that nothing school-related would happen here. And I understand the anxiety of like the building being put onto the town, but there are conversations about what the building could do still in the capacity as a school. So in the future, if populations start to rise again, then you have that flex.
And no, we can get you those numbers. I've seen them. I think when I saw them, it was last year, and the discussion was pre-K through 6. And I think it was going to put the Middlesex building close to capacity,
Right.
like
That's what I
90-ish. I'm making this
remember.
up, but like close. But that was with 6th grade there, and so now we're talking about 6th grade moving to 32, which opens up more capacity, obviously. Yeah. But I can get you those.
Yeah, I just have a hunch that things are not going to keep shrinking kid-wise. I think more people are going to come.
I mean, I love your enthusiasm, but nationally, there's nothing that suggests that's happening.
But just look at the flags around the school though.
Wait, Ethan, I saw your hand up for just a second. Go ahead, Rosie.
What would happen to the Doty?
Yeah.
What would happen to the Doty traditions? Like, because we wouldn't be able to have our haunted hallway or anything.
I've thought about that, Rosie. Rosie asked what would happen to the Doty traditions.
I think that kind of gets into some of the questions we're going to
Yeah.
want specific feedback for, so that's a really good one. Can we take logistical questions and then get back to those more specific?
And we have it noted. It's a really important question, Rosie. I don't know. I see Ben, 2, 3. Ben.
I just want to make sure that we're keeping the conversation locally and not like bringing in national data into our local conversation. So either keep the conversation in one area or the other, but like to mix these two things while both are important. I think one is maybe more relevant than the other. It would just help, like, I think, focus the conversation.
And I'm wondering, because I think it's really important sort of from the getting the feedback to get consistent feedback. And what I'm wondering is if we can go through the questions that we have from the configuration committee and to see if perhaps some of the points or questions that people wanted to make would get met through that. And then at the end, be able to open up to some of the other questions.
I think that's a good idea. I'd like to honor the few hands that
Yeah.
have already been up. So,
How's your preschool that they want to have fit into this configuration? They're talking about having preschool in the district.
Oh,
preschool?
Well, yeah.
oh,
I mean, the preschool discussion, there would be preschool at each of the three elementary schools, correct?
Or there could be a building that houses the preschool. So that's sort of the whole, there are so many factors that kind of go into it. There's still the commitment to provide and make our preschool program more robust. So then the figuring, for sure, if there were 5 elementary schools, we would run preschools in 3 of the buildings because they have the capacity for it. If there were 3 elementary schools, I honestly, that would be something that we would have to discuss. How would we then figure out, how would we then provide the programming that we want to provide the programming that we want to provide? Where would it happen? And it would necessarily have to happen at the 3 remaining elementary schools. Does that answer your question?
I feel like we should get back to you on that because my understanding from the preschool presentation was different from that. It was that it would be at the 3 elementary schools in this model.
That wasn't part of the configuration committee.
Okay, maybe we'll have to get back to the question.
Lisa?
So just a logistical follow-up question to Bill's question. I would just request in the notes that before this goes much further, that we get the information about the capacity of rooming and what the numbers would look like with the kids there. I think that would be really important for us to see as a community in terms of thinking long-term, but also I think it's like a little bit like as a community that like living in Worcester and thinking about what's going to happen to this building next, and you're like, well then if there's more kids, maybe we open up this school again. That sounds really complicated.
Yeah.
So I think knowing that, like, right, we saw capacity numbers when we were talking about Turtle Island here. Let's get some capacity numbers for Rumney that are very clear to us so we can understand where we're going to be at next year, and then we can understand where that might lead us. So that would just be my request.
Yes, it's in the memo from Stephen, so I have it. I'm happy to email it out to you. I'm looking at it right now, so you can also take a look at my screen. Yeah. I do want to follow, I honor the folks whose hands were raised when the suggestion was made, and then I'd like to move on to the questions, and then save time at the end for anything that didn't come up through our questions. We just want to make, every community is answering these questions, so we're just trying to have some consistency in what the board members are able to bring back to their conversation. So save some time at the end for anything that has not come up during that during the kind of guided question conversation.
I have a question. Can we see all the questions? So
There, you have them.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Got it.
I couldn't fit them all in one slide, but you have them in front of you. Yeah. This is more so that I don't lose track of it as I'm facilitating.
May I ask it now?
About the numbers?
Yes, when I see the 57 is the total for this year, how many kids kids do we have that are being homeschooled or have gone to private schools? Is there an
I'm not
additional
sure that
4
we,
or 5 or 3?
Well, I would have to look, it's fewer than 5.
I mean,
It's 5 or 6.
she said fewer
I
than
would have
5.
to look, hononestly, and I can't pull
So
it up.
there might be 4 or 5 additional to here that would be here, or could be included in this, so they're school age.
Yeah, they're choosing to do school in a
Exactly.
different
Thank you.
configuration. Yeah.
Sorry,
go ahead, yeah.
can I just jump in? Just to also kind of like clarify and refocus. Tonight, mainly, we want to hear feedback. We will, of course, try to answer questions when we can, but the main purpose of this was to get feedback. I know sometimes you can't give us feedback until we answer questions, but I just want to focus it on feedback, just because I feel like we could endlessly answer questions that clearly we don't always have the answer to, which I know is frustrating. But let's try to stay focused on general feedback if possible.
And it's feedback on this new proposal.
On the new proposal, the moving 6th grade 232 and the formation of 3 elementary schools. Berlin's kind of gets passed because Berlin just stays the same. I don't know what they're discussing in Berlin, but yeah, the formation of these basically 2 new communities.
So I actually want to look at these first 2 questions. I think we can look at them together because people can have responses to both or one. And that's looking at what kind of benefits or opportunities or concerns and worries we have. And I'd like to honor Rosie's question earlier because I think that we can address that within these 2 questions. Do you want to repeat your question, or do you mind if I repeat it back to you? Either one. Okay, you tell me if I have it, if I'm doing it correctly, please. Rosie's concern was what happens to our Doty traditions, and the example that she used was the haunted hallway. I gave a lot of thought to this actually last year, Rosie, and this year in September when we were having these conversations, because that is a concern for me, because it's a concern in my household as well. And one of the things I thought in trying to be kind of as positive as I can be is that what happens to the Doty traditions is you get to share them with your new community and your school.
So we still get to do them?
Absolutely. You get to be you as a school community, as a student body, in my mind, is one of the most important voices in recreating a school. And part of that is hearing how much you value and want to do a haunted hallway, how much you value and love ringing the bell across the street. Just because it's a new building and a new school does not negate having traditions happen in different places. How lucky are we that you get to go to community lunch? The new building is not that far away. Why can't we also incorporate community lunch into the school day? So those are some of the thoughts that I had in that question, because it's an incredibly important one. Yes, I see 1, 2. Go ahead.
It seems like one of the things that would really impact this great question about tradition is which adults will be in this newly birthed school. Counting on such well-spoken students is one of the pieces, but having teachers who know the tradition seems important too. One of my concerns and worries, and maybe also a question, is what happens to the teachers? Because I love what you're saying, where we're closing both schools and we're starting fresh. But is that what it will look like for the teachers? Are all teachers getting fired and reapplying? That doesn't seem. That seems really aggressive. But it also doesn't quite seem realistic that the Rumney teachers, the Rumney students, the Rumney traditions are going to be forgotten for something new to be rebirthed in its place. So how will the logistics of that happen so that Doty teachers get a shot at jobs? And the Doty community gets a shot at a voice?
I just want to make sure that we answer that question very clearly. I see a hand, I see another important hand over there.
Mine was up first.
Yeah.
Gillian, Stephen, and Caroline will be able to determine which teachers will go where. There are seniority clauses that come into effect when talking about this issue, but by and large, what happens is that Gillian, Stephen, and Caroline will be making the...
Actually, it's going to be district-wide, because...
So, excuse me, all the administration will decide where teachers go in the district, is that
not entirely, actually. Stephen and I have talked about this, because that's one thing, honestly, I think Stephen's learned about me over time, is that if I disagree, I'm not going to stay quiet about it. So seniority is district-wide. So instead of just doing piecemeal changes, we also have an opportunity to look at the strengths and talents within each team, within each building. And to then look at what we have and how can we kind of craft. So the sort of working, and this is very very draft thinking. But the draft thinking is that we would develop some sort of a survey or way of getting feedback from faculty across the district, because this is going to affect faculty across the district about if someone might want to move, somebody there, it could be that somebody's moved and they would like to be at a different school closer to home. So it is not going to be, I refuse to close either Doty or Callis and then just put them in an existing structure, because that's not a new school. That's just an existing structure. So it's really about looking at kind of shaking everything up and looking at this as an opportunity to also say, what do we have to bring to other schools? What are needs that some schools have? What are strengths that we have? And how can we really look at our pool of talent that we have and use it as best we can?
I think the question to take back is that this needs to be clearly addressed in the next iteration of communication.
We won't have an answer in the next iteration.
Well, something can be communicated.
So what we have heard consistently from administration is that, they are dedicated to this idea of starting a new community that's inclusive. So it doesn't mean getting rid of all the Romney traditions and us bringing ours, but it means, sharing each other's traditions, creating new traditions. And administration's well aware that we're all concerned. We want some familiar faces to transition with our students. And I believe that they're committed to making this transition as smooth and welcoming students into a new community with open arms. I truly believe that.
And then Brianna, and then Lisa, and then Noah. Go ahead. Yeah.
My biggest worry is what happens to the building. And I've heard any number of things floated. We could do this, we could do that, but I don't feel comfortable signing on to that big an unknown. And I can appreciate we can't necessarily close our options right away, but my worry is that the school building gets transferred to Worcester. Now Worcester is paying for the upkeep as well as paying our school taxes. So I feel like every time that's come up, what happens to the building, it gets sort of dismissed. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we really, really need to address it.
Thank you for bringing that up. I think that's a big concern of all of ours, being the Worcester residents for sure. And we have brought it up as well in these meetings. And in a sense, it's hard to get ahead in the planning when we don't actually know for sure that this is happening. But I've asked for support from the school board and from the district in really supporting a transition if there is a transition. And I've thought a lot about, again, what we heard a lot of was this is kind of the heart of the community, this school, this building, and I think there's a lot of opportunity that it still even if it's not a school, whether it's a daycare, an adult day center, community
If I
lunch.
could just say
here.
something, opportunity and support are both very vague concepts. What kind of support?
Yeah. I think that that's a really good
Especially
concrete,
money.
it's a good concrete question to take.
I asked a question 2 years ago about what does it cost to keep this school running as far as maintenance and stuff? And I've never gotten an answer, and I'd like to have one.
We have that.
We have it somewhere.
Go ahead.
So we talk about concerns and worries about our kids, and we talk about the community as a whole, but unfortunately, this is my first time coming here, mostly because I had a sixth grader that I would take care of, and now a second grader that I take care of, and so my schedule has always been very busy. What about the kids who have this severe anxiety about losing their school? What are we going to do with them? I know my son is one of those kids who, as earlier as today, freaked out. He was like, what about my therapist? Because his therapist does come here to the school. And as we get bigger, and I personally experienced it, having gone to East Montpelier, which was a much bigger school, it seemed like it was harder for us to get those kinds of support for parents, but also for the students. So if we merge these schools, what happens to those programs? What happens to those therapists that come and they talk to the kids when parents can't, come and take their kid and bring them to a therapist, and disrupt their day or take them out for hours and hours? Or, what happens to those kids who just are so worried about, so anxiety ridden about that change of this is where they've gone for as long as they've gone, and now they're going to a different school, and it feels like there's no safety net there for them.
Well, that's a big part of that transition question, and one that I think goes on, like, what's the transition planning?
Mm-hmm.
And this topic within, under
Right.
that is really important. Thank you. Okay, I have Lisa, Noah, and Naomi. You're good? Okay. Noah and Naomi.
This is sort of a question comment that I think spans both questions of sort of opportunities and concerns. And I think as a voter who may be likely asked to vote on this, something that would be really helpful for me, to see, I'm sort of a numbers guy, I would love to see comparison budgets of what it would look like if Doty remained open with either like 42 or 50 kids versus what would it look like if Doty were closed and all of the kids who were to go to this new school. Meaning, sort of like one of my biggest concerns at this point, even about keeping Doty open, is if Doty were to remain open, what gets cut, right? I'm looking at maybe a reduction by about a third of the overall budget, so going from $1 million to maybe 660 or 670. I'm not totally sure of those numbers. I'd be curious to just get a comparison of those numbers. But then, if we're going to lose a third of our budget, I'd love to see what would we be cutting out? What would I think this would probably mostly fall on but just sort of so that I know what I'm voting for in a way. If what I'm voting for is, let's say, not having a school counselor, not having a school nurse, not having a principal, I want to know that. I want to know that I'm making the best choice that I can for our kids. Understanding also the deep grief of not having a school here, but also the deep problems that could happen if we continue to have a school.
Right. We are preparing several models of budgets that will answer that question. I'm not sure when they're going to come out of draft. They're being workshopped right now.
Naomi,
Yeah, I think my question falls in the transition plan that you were just talking about, and maybe it's both opportunity and a concern is what that transition plan looks like for teachers, for administrators, for students, for programs, and whose job is that to guide that transition? Because that's a big job. So my hope would be that someone's job, as soon as the decision is made or even before, it shows up on someone's list of things that they're doing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and they know who they are, and there's accountability, and they're getting feedback, and their supervisor knows it's them, and it's just like, we know who's in charge of this, and it is really carefully thought out, and if it's not taking up a fair bit of someone's time and energy, I think that's a bad sign. Like, I think it really should take up a lot. And I think if it goes really well, like the more it goes well, the more I see the benefits and opportunities side of things. And the more it doesn't go so well, the more concerns and worries. And I think on the concern and worry side, I think that kind of transition plan is something that worries me a little bit because it's the type of leadership that I don't feel like I've seen a lot of in this district. That forward-thinking, community involvement, thinking about the students, thinking about that safety net. And so I think we really need to find the right person or people to be involved in that so that we can have more of those benefits and opportunities and know what they are and get really excited about them if this is where we end up heading. So put this one under concern and worry in the transition plan. So.
Right, your budget demonstrates your priorities. And if there is a specific line item or a person that is aligned to this process
and
this
accountability
transition.
for who are they reporting to and what does that look like? Because that's a big job.
Yeah. Thank you. Will, Christina.
I'm a parent, and I was the Doty School Board chair before the district merger. I think that, this decision, whatever the board does, then goes to, if approved, goes to the town for a vote. And I really think that we've had so many of these discussions that unless we have concrete information about what are the savings, what happens to the building and these sorts of things, whether you have kids in the school or whether you don't, and you're worried more about the tax side versus the community side, either way, what are the savings, what happens to the building, how are the kids, what is the configuration in Middlesex? If we don't have answers to those, it's not going to pass. So we're just sitting here talking over and over and over again. In other words, it's not going to be approved by the town, and then it won't happen under the articles of the district. So without the information, it's really hard to even think about this stuff. And two, I respectfully disagree about the thinking about what our district needs to do right now versus what the state has in store in a couple of years, because there's a massive reconfiguration of the education tax, how schools are funded with a foundation formula, and literal configuration of the school districts. And so, like, when I was reading through the materials for tonight, someone spent a lot of time with those little lines of the bus routes and the driving distances to the schools. But, in a couple of years, there will probably be a new, larger countywide district that is thinking about this, even like zooming out. And I understand, like, we're looking at this picture of our district, but there's a big white hole in the middle of this picture, and there's white all around. There's Moortown right there, and there's Berrytown that is near Calais. And all those kids go to school, and that larger district will have to think about all the physical buildings in its larger district. So I guess I'm really confused about why we're doing this now, after the board not doing it last year, now considering it again, faced with this, like, elephant in the room is like an understatement of what school boards are looking at right now. And I don't really understand why this would be considered right now, when a future school district's got to do this across many towns.
Hi, I'm Chrissy. I'm a Doty mom of two fifth graders and third graders. And I'm going to preface this by saying I love this school. Like, I have been a Doty parent since 2018 when my twins were 3 years old. I taught at this school. And the other night, I was here for the haunted hallway, just like watching all the students run around the gym. I was like, there really is no place in the world like this school. You have the 5th graders running around the 2nd graders and 1st graders. It was just, it's so cute. It's like, just to see them, they're like one big happy family. And I do love this school, and I get very emotional with the thought of this school non-existing. But I don't know if everyone in the room is aware that a few weeks ago, all the elementary schools got together at East Montpelier. And when my kids came home, they were all wearing t-shirts. It was a different color, and each grade was a different color. And my kids are in great, like I love their classes. A lot of them I've known since they were 3 years old. They have great peers in their class. But my daughter comes home in her gray 5th grade shirt, and she was so excited. She goes, Mom, you'll never guess how many girls there were there in gray shirts. And there was this one, and she knew their name and their life story and their history and their favorite animal, because she was meeting these other 5th graders that she almost didn't know existed in our district, who she will go to school with when she goes to U32, but she didn't even know they existed. And now she's like, and this one's my friend, and this one's my friend, and this one's my friend. And so what I see as a benefit of this is that they can have more connections with other kids in our district. And while the Doty community is so great and so wonderful, and they have such great friends here at school, like there are so many more opportunities for those social connections to happen, and which was one reason that I was very for 5th and 6th grade going to Romney when that was brought up last year, is because I just feel like there are social connections that they can have and what they can learn from other kids and meet kids from other towns and all that. I feel like it's so important when they get to U32, but they can start that sooner. And I just think that that is one benefit that can come from merging into 3-grader schools.
Caitlin and Dell.
So I'm just jumping into concerns or worries. Something that I know the administration and the board have sometimes placed as a negative for Doty is our multi-grade classrooms. And I would be sad to see that go. And so for me, that's a negative to the rebirth of learning communities. But again, I'd like to, I know everyone has already said it, but to reiterate the concern about what would happen to this building and what would happen to the town's taxes, especially with the vote on the bond. I don't know if we've gotten results for that yet. But you know, there's a tax increase with that, should it pass. There, you know, school budgets do continue to go up because of healthcare costs and other considerations. If we then added the care of this building to that, there would be a significant burden on Worcester versus other communities. And so it's great that we're talking about, should this go ahead, supporting the townsfolk and the students and making sure that, you know, nothing there is dropped, but this is a huge black hole of information and knowledge, and the school board is almost, I would assume, rightfully going to say that that's not their concern. Their concern is the students and those learning communities in this building is not in their purview should it no longer be a school, but that's a gaping hole in knowledge. And I would agree with whomever it was that said that, you know, would the town vote for a plan, even if it was the best thing for the students? Everyone in the community agreed, this is great for the students, but we don't know what's going to happen here financially. We need to know that.
Dell, Jim, Sean. Go ahead, Dell.
No. Okay, which of the 2 dozen things do I want to say? One is, has there been any talk, when I first moved to Worcester in 1981, there was a pre-K program at U32, which was so cool because the high school kids interacted with those kids. And I just wondered, I mentioned this at a board meeting at U32 a while ago, and I don't know if any follow-up to that thought happened. But it seems like a really good use of space right there. It's an easy drive for a lot of people. A concern is, I'm remembering the meeting over at Callis Elementary and how many people expressed concern about sending 6th graders out of elementary to the high school, essentially. I mean, they're riding the bus with the high schoolers, and it just, this is a tough world, but their middle school is a tough age, and I don't know. I love, I loved having sixth graders here, and I want the best for that group of kids. And I also, as Caitlin was saying, when we started doing multi-age here, we did it by choice. It wasn't because, and it's just such a wonderful way to have kids interacting with each other, and as a teacher, to know half of your class and half of your class knows you every year, and it was a lot of fun to have the curriculum change back and forth, and I don't know. So I think it's a win, although I know it doesn't seem to fit with if you look at the whatever's on the website about the curriculum in different grades, it should be that it's a perfectly viable way to do things.
So, we're not really answering questions, but I do just want to, because I think it goes along with clarifying the proposal. I don't think anything in the proposal is saying we would 100% do straight grade classrooms. I think it would be more of, there would be the necessity to combine, like if we combine, it would be by choice, as you were saying when we did it back in the day. It would be by choice in a way that didn't make pulling the kids apart from math and literacy, and make those cohorts too small.
Yeah, it would be
by choice, not by.
It would be if there were, that you would have a school that allowed for either single grades, and if there were going to be multi-grades, it would only be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6. That because those are, you wouldn't have the 2, 3. 2, 3, and 4, 5 are just terrible multi-grades, multi-ages.
It's funny, because I was wondering about that, because if this school lost its sixth graders, it seems like we could have a K1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. I was thinking, that's a different way of thinking about it.
Yeah. I'm gonna move to Ethan.
I just wanted to apologize because I interrupted and I did not, really intend to do that. So I apologize. And all I know is hard conversations are really hard to have. That's what I'm learning. This is a really hard one. It makes me feel sick to my stomach. I think multiple people probably feel that way. I don't know. So I apologize, and I just want to support everybody to continue to have the conversation that's extremely hard, that nobody knows anything about, or at least I don't. I'm willing and open to knowing and accepting all the information that comes my way, and if somebody sees me and has information, I'll take it whenever you see me, because everyone's busy. Other than that, we have a great town. All of you are beautiful. Have a great night. I apologize.
I think Chani, and then
I'm glad he said he feels sick to his stomach, because that, keep setting that aside, but that's totally true. But I want, is it okay to speak to these questions?
Yes.
Okay. Really appreciate so much what I've heard from other people, and really appreciate all of it. When I think about benefits or opportunities, there are a few things I wanted to lift up. I'm Shani, and I'm a parent of 2 kids who went all the way through Doty. And along the way, I had the opportunity to do the best I could at helping to coach some sports teams, and the relationships that the kids had were so beautiful and so supportive of them as then they were transitioning to U32. So I just wanted to lift that up. And Christy talked about it a little bit. I actually think that no matter the configuration, we could do so much better at helping kids know each other across the schools. And no matter what happens, we should. Because they really love connecting with each other, and it's really good for them. And we could, the sports teams are a great way to do it, but there's lots of other ways. I would really see this as an opportunity to bring multi-age education to another school that would be very small. where kids without multi-age education would be with the same group of people year in, year out. And I just would really love, I think that would be a really important thing to bring to another very small school. The other questions, if this closure of the school facility happens, what should we emphasize in building new communities, and how can we help new multi-town communities grow, connect, and thrive? I think we really need to have lots of intentional opportunities for adults to volunteer, adults from both towns, and like an actual investment. I wish this district would make an actual investment in community engagement and learn from the schools in other parts of the country that actually do a really great job connecting with adults in the community and creating those opportunities. Probably the thing that I love most about my kids having attended Doty is that they knew their neighbors, and I knew my neighbors too, partly through my kids, like that multi-generational way that we get more connected to each other through having a school community, and I wouldn't want to lose that. Like, that's probably the part of this whole process that makes my heart break the most, is thinking about losing. Like, I want my kids to know their neighbors, and I want to know my neighbors, and the school is such an important part of the fabric of our community that allows for that to happen, and that needs to, it would just need a lot more intention to make sure that that stays true. And then there's, people talk so much about the community lunch, and it's just like deeply meaningful, and I think what it gets at is like kids would still need to have opportunities to do service learning in the communities where they live as well, the community where they're going to school. So, and then the final thing is, what would the district do to address concerns and make this transition easier for everyone? I feel very strongly, and I'm gonna start like really pushing this every chance I get, that the district is gonna need to make a multi-year commitment, including a financial commitment, to help Worcester transition. And the building would be at the center of that. I think it would need to involve support, and financial support, for a process for our community to build a vision around this building that would connect to our town plan and our dreams for what this town would be like in 20 years. We need to do some assessment of what it would cost for that transition to happen, and we might need help, also financial help from the district in thinking about how to move that forward. Thank you.
Julie, Justin, Lauren, Lisa.
I am going to stand up because I don't think most of the people in this room even know who I am. My name is Julie McKinstry, and I'm the kindergarten teacher here at Doty. And I also am Worcesterite. So I have mixed feelings like you all do. Concerned about where I might go next year when this happens. But I am a big believer of, I am hoping when this happens, we actually get more straight grade classes. As a teacher, it is extremely difficult to teach 2 grades at the same time and ensure that every single one of those students is getting what they need in their 1st grade curriculum, or their 2nd grade curriculum, or their 5th grade curriculum. If they're all the same in the same grade, they're all going to get what they're supposed to be getting. I have 7 students this year. They are fantastic. But I spent the last 2 weeks with 4 of them because kids were sick or they were gone. Having 4 kids to teach didn't really work out very great. So if we had combined community schools and I had a class of 20 and then there were 4 sick, I'd still have a lot of kids to do the curriculum with and then catch up those few that were gone. I didn't have much opportunity, I feel, to be much of a kindergarten teacher these last 2 weeks because I couldn't really move on because I didn't have my class. I get that this building might be empty, and that is a sad thing. I've lived here for 20 plus years. But we need to make sure we are focusing on what our kids need and where they're going to get that the best. what am I gonna do with 3 kindergartners next year? That's a problem, and it's not gonna get better. And we need to remember, as hard as this might be, our kids are the ones that we need to educate and we need to support. And I think creating some community schools is gonna help them with that.
Justin?
Yeah, there was one comment that struck me kind of emotionally, which was we're closing 2 schools. I get the theory behind that, but I find that language extremely problematic because one community is actually feeling that and the other is not. I think if we asked the Middlesex community, do you feel like the school's closing? They're not going to say that. I also think that creating culture is, well, change is difficult and culture change is extremely difficult. There are likely traditions that are embedded in the physical fabric of that school in Rumney that will not allow a new culture to take place. And I think, I would say one concern that I have is that Worcester students will always feel secondary in that location. I grew up in southern Massachusetts. It was a big school. My class was 257 students, okay? We merged with Berkeley, which was a rural town, and it was Somerset, Berkeley. Berkeley always, to this day, decades later, because my father worked at the school for many years, always felt secondary. So that's one concern I have, is we are just moving students to another physical location. And if we're going to build new culture, it has to be extremely intentional and very, very well done. And I think that's going to be hard no matter how we try to do it. I agree with Chrissy's point about lots of opportunities, social connections, all of that stuff. Totally agree with that. And I think that the district has had many years to try to figure this out and has never done it. And I've been disappointed by that fact, that there have not been more intentional opportunities to connect the schools together outside of sports, which our son and daughter play sports. And we've connected with all sorts of kids, and it's wonderful. But outside of that, like, there's not many other structured opportunities to do so. So that is a benefit, I would say, of having bigger schools, more students. But there's also, to the point that was made earlier, lots of opportunities to make that happen, regardless of whether we actually merge some of the schools together.
Lauren?
Sure. I just have a few, I suppose, concerns about closing a school. They connect to what other folks have said. One, I think we hear a lot of the negatives to the small school, and I'm not discounting the numbers. A class of 2 kindergartners is not ideal. I get that. I'm not arguing that at all, but I think it's really, what I always tell people about Doty, like, no school is perfect, right? But I think what Doty gets right here is building relationships among our students as a whole school, and our kids feel safe and secure in here in Doty. And I think that as schools get larger, even though the new combined school would still be a small school, as schools get larger, it's really hard to build those relationships and have strong connections as a whole school community. So I think that is a concern, and just, I don't know what the numbers of the new combined school would be. Over 100? I don't know. I don't remember what it is. All that to say, I think something like an all-school meeting is going to be less meaningful when there's over 100 kids versus 50 or whatever it is right now. And I think that the skills my kids are learning in building those relationships are really important and lifelong skills. And I think also one concern I have in losing the multi-age structure is actually with multi-age kids have more different social, they have a different, I think Tani mentioned this, a different cohort every year. And looking at, I wish we had the document from the letter or proposal Stephen put out with the classes in the proposed 3 new elementary schools. Like, I think only one grade had 2 classes. So a first grader could, in theory, be with the same kids, kindergarten through 5th grade, every single year. And so I think that social connection is actually a loss. And so
think and also in that Stephen mentioned he prefers straight grade. And so it doesn't sound like the district is open to multi-grade classrooms. And I think also this connects to the money and the town. This is my financial taxpayer hat. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but when the district merged with Act 46, Worcester took on bonds that the other towns had voted for, Middlesex and East Montpelier, any other towns? So we were paying for a bonds that we didn't vote for, and that was just part of the merger agreement. And I think Worcester took a huge hit tax-wise then, and now I really like, and I would support the district financially supporting Worcester if we now have to take on this building, because I think the financial burden will be that much greater for the Worcester taxpayer, and I think has been pointed out in the past, education taxes are income sensitive, but town taxes are not. And our taxes went up a lot this year for the town taxes, and I can only see that increasing, and I don't think that is sustainable for Worcester. Has the lowest economic status of all the five towns.
Yes. Middlesex has the highest.
So, and I guess another concern, sorry for this is my last thing, but somebody mentioned the community lunch. My son has really benefited and talks about that a lot, and I think the connection to the town is really important. And I mentioned a different field trip to his teacher, and she said that at one point they needed a bus to get up to the Good Heart Farmstead, and it cost $200. And so I think a concern that I would like brought if this happens, like we need vans or something to get our kids from the schools. If we are going to commit to keeping our Worcester kids connected to the Worcester community, it can't be a financial burden of a $200 bus ride or always asking for parent volunteers. Thank you.
I have Lisa, and then up front, and then.
I think I'm answering the question around 6th grade, student grade, so that like there's two really big issues happening. The 6th graders moving into school, and they are very interconnected, and it's hard to know like what our sort of assumptions are. I think just a little bit of feedback. I want to talk a little bit about 6th grade, and there's a question, there's a request, and a concern. And I think my request is that we've heard Stephen at board meetings talk about building robust middle level experience in Vermont. So I taught since 6th grade here, as a parent of 2 kids here, and now teach at People's Academy middle level. And we have some frameworks around middle level education in Vermont. But I would really love for Stephen to articulate, or the board, or whoever, to articulate what opportunities we are going to intentionally create to welcome 6th graders there and to make that a place, like what does a robust middle school mean? Beyond, like I understand there are more sports opportunities and there are more kids for our kids to socialize with, and I'm like 100% behind that, but those are just happenstance, right? If I move my kids into a bigger place, they will be able to play more sports and we will meet more kids, and I think those things are great. But like, I don't want to do it for that reason, right? Like if we're saying we're going to intentionally create a middle level model which meets the needs of our 12-year-olds to 14-year-olds, tell me more about that. I want to know about that before I vote on it, or I guess I'm not voting on that one. Sorry, that the district just decides. But I do want to know more about that because I think it's vague to just say that we're committing to a robust middle level model beyond, again, just sports opportunities and more friends. Because middle school is hard, and it is hard to do middle school right, and just plopping our 12-year-olds in a bigger community of people is not necessarily going to meet their needs, and I haven't heard that yet. So that would be a request, a concern and a request that we get more information about that. Because again, we're not going to vote on 6th graders moving, but it is going to largely impact this whole chain of events, right? In terms of what Doty, our smaller schools, what all of our schools look like, but what our smaller schools look like. And then I just was thinking, I don't know that if this is like separate, but I would love a way, and right, there's gonna be notes from this, right? So there's like things that over here, and things that over here, and things that over here, and like when the board receives notes, like it would be hard to know like how many people in the room that were able to show up in the room were like, right, like, I would love to agree with Naomi, she might be gone, but right, like that said, okay. But whoever said like, we need someone to be in charge of this process and be accountable, like, I want to second that, right? And like, I want the board to know what things the people that were in the room were like one-offs and what were like supported by the voices that were in the room. And I don't know if there's a way we can do that.
Luckily, Natasha's a meticulous note taker.
But like, Natasha doesn't know how many of us are like, yes, I agree with that. Or like, no, I'm actually not.
No, but if people are making comments that are similar, I am like, yeah.
I just don't want to like
Yeah, no, I-
things right now verbally that I heard. That would be great. But it would be great if there becomes a way.
And I'm not trying to supersede all the hands that are in the air, but one of the things that, as I'm reading these questions, it's asking, and I was not a part of this process, so I'm just, but it's asking for what are some things that you would like to see, and I'm hearing lots of questions, which is wonderful. But as Deborah said at the beginning, like this is a chance for you to say, this is what we want. If this is gonna happen, this is what I want for my kids when we combine our communities into one building. This is what I want for my kid as a sixth grader at U32. So I wanna honor all the hands that are in the air, but if people have suggestions of things that they want to see the district do to help with this, please let us know. Because otherwise, there's a group of people making decisions for you without you actually saying, but this is what that should look like.
Okay, I think I'm tracking here. And then I'm going back to Melissa. Did you have your hand?
Yeah, I have a specific request. I'm
Great.
Hey, I'm addressing number 8 specifically, about sixth grade students feeling welcome. So kind of circling back to what Lisa was saying about
Hard to hear, we're having that conversation.
sorry, the resources that are available and the support that's happening for the sixth grade students. I just wanted to address the fact, so I have a fifth grader currently who will be a sixth grader next year at the, I guess, proposed middle school, Uber middle school. And I think specifically, I and my daughter Rosie really need a timeline. We need to know by which date will there be a vote, which date will there be a decision by the board, so that she can start emotionally planning, so that I can start planning an entirely different work schedule, whatever, transportation life next year, all of that stuff. And so that the schools have time to prepare all of that wonderful connection that makes the families and the kids feel okay. Like, my questions for the student, for my daughter, who would be part of this guinea pig class of new students, who would her teachers be? Are they already there? Would they be like sort of pushed into seventh grade classes? Are they going to be the sixth grade teachers they currently have? There are so many questions. And so I'm specifically asking for a timeline because we need these questions answered, I'm just going to be selfish because my daughter has had this every single year for the last 3 years. And before that, it was 2 years of COVID. So we're kind of at our capacity in terms of just needing some answers. So
I don't think that's selfish at all. Less than back.
Yeah, two separate. Oh, I'm Catherine. I'm a mom of 2 Worcester kids. One is 2, and one is a kindergartner in this school. And we lived here for 3 years. Yeah, so 2 big buckets. The first is I really appreciated the idea, like we were seeing Taylor around for 2 schools closing. But the second part of that clause was like, trust us because we're thinking about you and we have your best interest. I think the trust has been really eroded with the board. I have not felt like the board has been a neutral arbiter coming in to help us find the right thing for our kids. Boards had an agenda from day 1, and it's always been clear. That doesn't build trust. So if we're asking for trust from the community, we need to wipe that slate and like the proof is in the pudding. Where is the support? Where is the infrastructure for this new community school to reflect Worcester and Middlesex, but like really reflect the kids who are having to go and make this shift? So that's like, I really think we need to figure out that. And like these community meetings are a great start, but there's going to need to be a lot more of that for this, I think, for this town not to do what we did last year, which is like make a big, loud stink and shut it down, which is not, you know, we get stuck if we do that, right? And the second piece is the configuration committee has presented this plan, and it still has no answer for this building, which lots of people have talked about. And we've heard that there's probably a scholastic purpose for this building, which makes me feel like the lights are on, the heat is on. Why aren't we saying that we're having half of the kids here and half of the kids at Rumley running two smaller schools where you have combined ages or you have whatever structure you need to have? But it feels like a total waste if we're going to merge and create these districts to have these buildings just sitting empty or have them just be offices. That feels like such a shame. And if we can't do that, if we need to have all the students there, and it's really important, the configuration committee is very clear that that needs to happen, I think that it would land so much better with the Worcester parents and I would say the whole community, including Middlesex, if early childhood was considered for this building. Those of us who have kiddos under 5, the options are so narrow here. They're all so expensive. And it just, working families are not supported in central Vermont right now the way they should be. And it just feels like that is an obvious choice for an empty space here.
I think behind Julie.
I think so.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
What's that? Oh, yeah.
My question is, as we talk about inclusivity, why isn't this a Middlesex/Worcester town meeting? Why aren't, like, I'm really curious, and it's on me for not having looked up when their town meetings are, having gone. I would like to hear the words that we're using about closing 2 schools, reopening a new one. I want to hear those words land in their ears and hear and feel their energy and what they have to say. Are we actually all on the same page? That to me is very important because the comment that has stuck in my brain from this meeting so far is the Worcester students feeling like the second best. It's very, very important. I don't believe in us versus them on the micro scale or the macro scale. I teach that to my kids. But I do fear that for them going to the richer community. And I suppose what I would like as what would make it easier, and one of those questions applies to this, it'd be easier if you could have multi-town.
Can you speak up a little bit more?
I'm sorry. My request is that we have specific multi-town meetings so that we can navigate it together. And I want to hear their take on it as well. That's all.
Yeah. It's okay. So Ashton, who are you?
Oh, I'm Andrew. I have 2 Doty kids.
Okay. Andrew got a haircut, so he looks very different.
No, I recognize you.
Oh my gosh, that's Andrew. I really had no idea who you were.
And so I did speak earlier, but my name is Renata. I have a son that goes here, and as I stated, I previously had a 6th grader who was here. And so Natasha, I hear what you're saying about us, saying what we want, but this is a 2-parter, and I apologize. So it sounds like we all need more information before we can even begin to have a discussion. And it sounds like, and again, I am one of those people who have just been lackluster and busy with my children and not here for all of these meetings, which is completely on me. So I've missed out on a lot. However, having a child that this will affect and, you know, hearing what everybody is saying, it sounds like that information needs to be solidified and needs to come out to us beforehand. Moving on to the question that I have and how that works, we're talking about sending 6th graders to U32. I am a U32 alumni. I graduated from there. It is a great school and I do love it, and my stepson is now there. How do they plan on adding to the capacity where there is 697 students now to accommodate another 80 to 100 students that are going to be there? I feel like that is also something that we need to take into consideration if we're going to have our 6th graders from all districts go to U32. And U32, from my understanding and from having gone there, is pretty, it's got space, but it's also at capacity if you don't move things around. So what does that look like on that scale for those kids? That would be something that I personally would want to hear and would want to see. Having, you know, having my son be friends with most of the 6th graders here, and having known most of the 6th graders here and having a 6th grader that just went to 7th grade who is nervous, still, even being there for the last few months, is still having a hard time, is still nervous about the structure itself being there. So I think having these answers to these questions solidified with the data, with this information that we can all look at and have in our hands and go, okay, let's make a decision and have the conversation that we're supposed to be having today would benefit everybody. And like Drew said, adding Middlesex to this, so, you know, we can see what they're hearing and we all have the same information, so there's no miscommunication anywhere of, you know, between the two towns. So that is my take, and that is my question and my thoughts.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely.
You said you were asking whether U32 has capacity. Are you asking about like physical capacity? Because I will just say when I went there were 900 students and it was a smaller building. So physically,
Yes.
it can hold the students.
I'm
Are you
talking
what do you
capacity
mean by
as in
capacity?
like, there are, I understand we'll have to have more teachers. So more students means more teachers, which means more moving around. And when I went to school there, people were struggling to like keep the band room a band room. And I graduated in 2009. So, and I think my class had, I don't even know how many people we had in our class. It was a lot. But keeping our band room and the guitar room as separate entities, and from my understanding, there's a lot of places that are merging and sharing classrooms now.
Okay.
You know, you're now adding, give or take 100 students, which give or take you need to facilitate that with staff, so you're adding more staff.
So your question is staff capacity, not physical capacity?
Combination.
Staffing and also programming.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure
no,
that
absolutely.
I'm getting your thoughts down accurately.
And I just want to point out that you both make beautiful points, Renata and Larrabee, and I just want to point out the tension between them and the difficulty of this conversation is like, on the one hand, we need a decision to be made so that we can prepare and we can make that transition, and on the other hand, there's of course a request for more information and more discussion. But like those two things kind of can't coexist.
Can they be separated? I mean, it sounds, because they are, and this was addressed before, they are very separate issues. And I know that there is a domino effect, but if this is going to happen next year, the ball has to get rolling now. And if that's going to happen.
Is it really going to happen? Is it?
Right, I mean, if it's still on the table, then we need to know that as well.
Are you asking about, is 6th grade happening
Yes,
next year?
yes, I am.
Is it? Is that already a done deal? 6th grade?
It hasn't
Moving to
been
32?
The board hasn't voted on it.
So at this point,
That's true, right.
at
That's
this,
true. It doesn't need to.
so at this point, I can't answer that question. I can answer it. Administration can answer it. I would like to know. I don't understand. At this point, there is no plan to move this is a package deal at this point. It is all, it's all or nothing. It is not about, it's not about taking sort of a menu of choices from, this is the package. And at this point, there is not conversation about moving 6th grade to U32 separate from a reconfiguration on the elementary level. One thing that I think I was very vocal about in the last configuration committee meeting is the administrative, putting my administrator hat on now, we need a decision. We need to say, we need direction from the board that says, yes, make this happen, or it's dead in the water. And that's a lot of sort of the urgency of getting this done relatively quickly. There are two things that then the board needs to think about. One is the decision itself. Is, do we accept this model, board? Do we accept this model as something that we want to move forward? And if we accept this model, what is the timeline that we want? Is this something that we want to have happen for fall of 20, wait, it is 25, fall of 26, or fall of 27? So those are the kind of the pieces that need to happen. Administratively, we are thinking really sort of generally, and I'm holding a lot of stuff, but I am not going to put my staff through a mess of maybes.
And
period.
Nor are we going to put the students through that. I mean, I
Right.
think,
Yeah.
to your point, Larrabee, our students have been through this. This is the third, yes.
Every year.
And
It's just,
that was
it's
the
so
point that we made.
incredibly,
Yeah.
it's exhausting. It's disrespectful to the students. And you talk about prioritizing the students and the learning, this is not it. I'm sorry, I appreciate the time, but this is, just please make a decision.
And
Yes, I would say, I would even argue that because there is so much unknown about the overall merger, I would propose that we do not make this decision until 2027. Like the 6th grade is locked in. Like they're graduated in or they're grandfathered in for this year, and that if that happens, it happens next year. So that there's some consistency, or that there's some answer. So that's what I would say. It's a great idea for next year. Please.
Yeah, I think that's important to capture in the notes and to bring back to the board.
I don't think that's unreasonable to just lock that in, that 1 year.
I see Will's hand.
Just logistics question on that. So if the board is considering this in November, what is the timeline for a vote in Calais and Worcester?
The timeline for votes, so you have to, the school budget has to be voted on town meeting day. In order to vote on town meeting day on the school budget, it has to be warned by the end of January. So the budget has to be warned by the final meeting in January, which I want to say is on the 29th. In order for the board to approve a budget, they have to know what budget it is that they're going to approve. So to back it up, the board has to make a decision in early December in order to have, and if the board makes the decision to close Doty and Calais in December, they have to do it by December so that it can be warned and voted by early January, so that then we know which budget to give them to vote on.
So in the configuration, configuration timeline, I'm reading directly from this document, December 3rd, the school board would vote on the recommendation. The school board would then warn an article for a special election depending on how that came out. And then January 13th would be a vote for communities impacted with a school closure.
And so, once the board votes to send it to the voters, is that a done deal at that point? In other words, if Callis votes yes and Worcester votes no, or vice versa, does the board still have the authority to step back and then reshuffle everything? Or is it the train is out of the station at that point? Because the board has voted yes, and then that community has voted yes or no on the closure. And so what happens, you're gonna have to prepare a lot of budgets.
I do not have the answer to that question. I can tell you what my understanding is, but I don't want to do that because I don't want to put out any false information. You already have too little information, so I don't want to give you the wrong information. That is what is on here for the timeline. I will put into the notes that what part of the information that you need is if the board votes yes and one town votes yes and one town votes no, what does that mean?
Right.
It's a very quick timeline.
Yes.
The majority of people in Worcester vote yes on that.
Especially with all the questions.
And 2 years. So I absolutely appreciate the conversation, but we do have some folks still with their hands up. I think Noah, Lisa, Caitlin. No, you had your hand up earlier. I'm sorry, I missed you. You should go first. You did.
She did, yeah.
I knew there were hands here before, and they weren't still up, so go ahead, Casey. Yes.
I'd like to have the minutes from the 5 meetings that are taking place at all the schools tonight posted on their website, so people could see what other towns are thinking. That might help, at least there it might help.
Is it recorded? I see a camera. Is it recorded in Middlesex tonight?
Is every town recording?
I believe.
Yes, I believe Orca has cameras in most every community room.
Great.
And I believe the minutes will be posted.
I'd just like to make an observation, which is that my sense is that the tone of this meeting is very different from the tone of the major meeting last year. Last year it was like, do not close our school, we will fight you. This year, what I'm hearing is something more like acceptance, but with anxiety. What about this? What about that? What about the other thing? And I do feel like, the configuration committee is in the spot where tell us what we're going to do and then we'll figure it out. But what we need is tell us what you figured out and then we'll tell you if we can live with it.
I just want one clarification. That's the board. The configuration committee doesn't have the answers to all of these questions. So just, yes, I agree, but I just that clarification. I think I have Noah, Lisa, Caitlin, and then in the back.
I didn't introduce myself, but I didn't know Weinstein. I had a third grader here at Doty, and I was one of the most vocal people last year about not closing Doty, and I think that Mimi is correct that my attitude has shifted, and I think a lot of it is around the numbers, and I think that context specifically, I think having a school that is this small, the way that the budget changed last year is that money follows the kids specifically. And so if we are losing, let's say, 20 kids between last year and this year, then our budget goes down by that many kids. And I think last year, I looked at last year's budget, each kid was at $17,000. So that's a lot of money, that again, that's like a third of the budget. So I feel a lot of concern about that. I said that before. I love the question, Natasha, of what do we want? And one of the things that I'm hearing from everybody is that one thing that we want is information, right? I think that we can't get through, if the town is going to vote yes, it's going to vote yes because the board did a stellar job convincing us yes. And I think that the timeline proposed makes that very difficult to do, to give us the adequate information to make people want to vote yes, wholeheartedly. One proposal that I would put out there in terms of what we want would be that we will vote on this as a town. The board could say, yes, we want the towns to vote on this for FY27. right? So for, the school year that starts on the 27th, that we could hold a vote, let's say this March, right? We could hold a vote on town meeting day for the following school year, right? So not for the upcoming school year, but for the one after that. So we then have about a year and a half to plan for this and to really do it well. I would still have concerns about what that would mean for our budget next year, what Doty would look like so small next year. So I'm not saying I love that idea for that reason, but it's a possibility that might sort of hit two birds with one stone. In terms of other things that I would want, in terms of transportation to a new school, I would want there to be a bus stop at either probably Doty or the town hall that goes directly, the last stop from Worcester stops at Doty, and anybody who wants to bring their kid to Doty, just like we do now, gets to put their kid on the bus, and it drives straight by Deborah's house, picks up Leo, and then goes to Doty, and then goes to the Middlesex school.
You gotta stop and get winter.
Yes. And so that would be, so that our kids would essentially have a 10-minute bus ride to school if we want that.
Right.
I would also want a bus that goes from the Middlesex school to Montpelier, as it currently does, so that kids could then have the opportunity, my daughter could take the bus to Montpelier after school and then go to as many dance classes as she wants, or art classes, or whatever else she wants to go to. So I want those two things in terms of transportation. I would love to have a school-funded eco program at the new school that is not contingent upon us doing our own fundraising for it. I'd love it to be as school-wide as possible. And that is both true for its own program, but also true for, like, I want a theater program, I want their skiing program, I want, all the other cool things. I'd say that Lumley currently has that, Worcester doesn't. I want all those things. That doesn't sort of strike away the grief that I would have of not being able to have a community, school in my town, but it would help to know that we're getting some perks out of it. And I will just second that I really want to have somebody whose job it is to make this happen. And I guess the last important question in terms of next year, if Doty were to be open next year, would the kindergarten be here? Right? I think that that's another big priority of mine that has surfaced, which is the desire, like, the sort of, I want a school in my town. I also want all of our kids to stay together. And I don't like having kindergarten up there and pre-K over here, and I like our community, even if it's combined with another community. I like that, that my third grader gets to see her kindergarten buddies, and that they're not sad. Thank you.
Please.
I think this is just a quick logistical one that I would want to add to Renata's, because you were asking Natasha clarifying questions to Renata about space in U32, and I guess I would like to know about physical space in the middle school part of U32. Right? Because the building is it's big. I have no idea, but I'm curious if the middle school part, because that's part of the cell of middle level at U32, is that it is very separated and not mixed in with high school, right? So zones are a little bit more schools. So is the middle school wing of U32 will definitely more kids? And if not, what is the plan to then hold our 11 and 12-year-olds through 14-year-olds in a robust middle school model? And then my last is just to connect to a lot of what's being said. I do think like there is a piece of this, like what you want, and I think we have said for year after year after year after year right now that what we want is a respectful timeline and a respectful amount of information before we're asked all these questions. We said it last year in the fall, we said it last year in the spring, we said it years before. And so it does start to feel disingenuous to keep being asked these questions and to keep saying, we need answers before we're able to say if this sounds good or not. Like, you have this sound to us. We said this so many times in the spring. Like, nothing is sold to us as very intriguing. And like, I think a lot of us could be intrigued right now. I could be too. My opinions have shifted about opportunities, but there's so many holes in the information that it's a big leap of faith. And like the last couple of years have not, for some of us, have eroded our faith. So we can't just run out of faith.
Caitlin?
Oh, I'm going to give a time check.
We have
checked
like
out.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I have Caitlin, Lauren, and just some other folks that haven't spoken. There's a couple folks that haven't spoken, so in the back. Go ahead, Caitlin. And if we can just get 1, 2, 3, 4, then we can wrap it. Go ahead.
So, sorry, I totally lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
Picking over. No, it's good. It'll come to me, the rest of it.
A little louder.
Okay. So I would love to know what I'm voting for, specifically here in the flyer that whoever prepared. All these bullet points are really great. It's saying we're going to have substantially similar programming if we were to merge, rebirth, whatever. Are we guaranteed to have pre-K in the new building in perpetuity? What does special ed look like? It's listed here, but more details, of course. Sports, music, art, world languages. What world languages? Like, I want that detail. Before and after school programming, is that guaranteed year over year? Is it both? Will there be busing available back to our community from the before or after care programming? Will we have a full-time nurse in a new combined school? Will we have full-time counseling in a combined school? The detail, again, like other people said, some trust and faith has been eroded, and without answers, I don't blindly trust. So detail and specificity, and I might remember the rest later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the middle school, when it was formed, was put together for 4 core groups, and there are 3 core groups now. I've been subbing there. There's definitely enough room for another core, which should be able to hold the kids that would come from the 6th grade. And that when that program was put together, it was done with a lot of intention, using a number of middle school faculty from UVM, and it was a stellar, strong program at the time. What I see still is, but you don't need to take my word for it, obviously. And I'm sure that getting the 6th graders in there, it would need to be, looked at as a whole again. But I think it's really exciting to have those kids there, because most middle school models are 6 through 9, or 5 through 9 actually. But there's a lot that you can do in that building. And there is a lot of space. That's what I was, in the middle school itself. And actually, I've been even going back and subbing when I had taught there before. I'm surprised sort of at how set apart the middle school actually is. I mean, they have to go through and go down to the band rooms, but then when they're in band and chorus and stuff, there really aren't any high school classes that are going on at that point in time. So I know, that's really all I wanted to say.
Thank you. I see you remembered yours. I just want to hit the people that haven't spoken yet.
Hi, I'm Kathleen. I have a 5th grader here now. I guess a couple logistical questions. It's not the fear of having the kids separate from the high schoolers. It's the fear of having the kids on the bus. So it's a different, you're not going to solve that logistically. We personally are going to drive our kid door to door. I'm fortunate to be able to do that. That's what we're going to do. So as far as what I want, I don't know how you're going to address that for a lot of the fears, having those kids 6th grade on the bus with other kids. Phones, drugs, sex, whatever have you, I don't know. As far as the other piece of the whole pie, I don't have a child in the mix as far as what is being proposed for Alice or Rumney or Doty or these new imagined schools, but I guess I'll just voice what I want. I definitely want ego. I definitely want traditions. And I love Noah's idea about, again, having a central stop if you want your kid to have a short bus ride versus an hour bus ride. The hiccup with having a bus to Montpelier is that these kids go to school too late in the day. all the Montpelier programs start at 3 o'clock at Wilder Arts, at the North Branch Nature Center, at TW Wood, at Craftsbury Ski. Our kids can't take advantage of any of those programs because we get out of school too late. So I also would propose that the district flip, like the rest of the world is flipping, and that high school goes to school later and the elementary kids go to school earlier, and our kids can take advantage of those Montpelier programs. Because right now they can't unless we pull our kids from those from schools. And I personally haven't heard anything strikingly positive about the Brumley community. I know we have a Brumley teacher right here in the room, and I don't know his feeling on anything, but I mix a lot with the Brumley community because of sports, and I don't hear anything positive. Their facility, as far as sports goes, isn't that great. Their baseball field is not well maintained. They don't have a person to maintain it at all. Our baseball field is actually better maintained than their baseball field is, and no one even plays on our baseball field. And mostly that's because of her husband. And I've not heard anything positive about their principal in the last 5 years that I've been involved in that community. And I personally am in favor of multi-age classrooms. I don't think somebody mentioned, Johnny mentioned, you want to propose and you want to put that in this proposal. From what you read of Stephen's proposal, who is the person who gave it to the configuration committee to rubber stamp. They didn't come up with it, Stephen came up with it. There's no multi-age classroom at all in there, and he actually doesn't believe in it. And if you read the minutes from the configuration committee, it's that he thinks the kids in Worcester are getting less instruction right now compared to other classrooms that aren't multi-age. He feels as though they're not being instructed because they're stuck in multi-age and they're getting less instruction time. So for anyone who is in favor of multi-age classroom because of the friendships or because of the different ways that they change each year to year, or because that they learn from a 6th grader, the 5th grader learns something from them, or the 1st and 2nd grade, that's not on the table right now. It's not in the proposal. So I don't think there's a way to even have it.
So I do just want to clarify something from that meeting, because this was a discussion I had with Stephen, because it was the first time I heard him bring up, or someone bring up, that multi-age classroom students got actual less direct instructional time in math and literacy than straight grades. And the clarification is that that is not always true, and if multi-grades are designed intentionally, then that doesn't need to be true. And if the teachers are, experienced the level to support that, it doesn't need to be true. It's not universally true. But if in a situation where it's forced combined classrooms all the time with often the teachers who don't have a lot of experience, or small schools who don't have a lot of extra help sometimes, then it does become true. So again, getting back to if we're going to do multi-age, doing it by design and with intention rather than being forced into it. So I just want to clarify. I don't know.
But I think, so is that an ask, Kathleen, for the notes? An ask is to consider and to have multi-age option in the proposal.
It's not really an ask for me. I'm just saying that it's not in the proposal for if you're going to close certain schools and make these new schools, multi-age is not in the proposal.
As it stands, yes.
So I'm just making people aware of that.
The proposal has the numbers by grade.
Right.
It's not a set curriculum or set. It's not set in stone. It's for numbers for the school, for the grades. So it doesn't necessarily mean it will only be a 5th grade, straight 5th grade. It's just this is the number of 5th graders if we do this.
So I think the curriculum is not part of the proposal.
Right.
And that's not the configurations
The way that the
committee.
devised is for straight line classes. So we didn't see a proposal for any multi-age.
The proposal does not include any curriculum. That's not something
But
that
it's
the configuration
still straight
committee.
line the way it's lined up. So
Yeah. the way that it's
You really have to have a big imagination to see.
Okay, so I think we got that one of your asks would be to consider a multi-ed classroom.
That's not
with
my ask, it
intentions.
was just the ask here. I don't have a.
You're allowed to have ask, Kathleen, even though you're not going to advocate it.
No, but again,
And I've heard it from other
I
people,
just-
and I feel it too. I agree. Like, let's throw that in the mix.
Yeah, and just to my point that I haven't heard anything overly positive about that from the community is that, and also my understanding again, is that the way that it's gonna filter down as to who survives and who doesn't, these are union contracts, it's all based on seniority. So from what I've heard, you know, like that's what's gonna, granted, yes, you can have a survey for some teachers that might wanna move to certain places, but again, these are people's lives and they have contracts and it's based on seniority. So that's who you're gonna get for if you're gonna scrap the school and build the school, that's who you're gonna get for teachers.
There's also language in the contract that allows administration to reassign people,
Yeah.
and it is district-wide.
I just want to honor that there's
Yeah,
somebody
and-
whose voice hasn't been heard yet,
Yes.
so I want to make sure that she has an opportunity to speak.
If the multi-town school does go forward, I think what I would like to see is not just full-time counseling, but even more than that for our students. So like what can Doty students benefit from this change? What can all students in these communities benefit? I think the greater support with the phone. I think greater support of school counseling and social emotional instruction. And I am an educator and I understand the importance of academic instruction, but our kids can't learn if their social emotional needs are not met and if they're coming to school hungry. Thank you.
Deb, really quick. Is there a proposal where sixth grade can stay in the elementary schools and not go to U32 and still do a school-wide consolidation?
I don't know that I've seen a proposal, but the numbers might be in Stephen's.
Okay, that's just like an open question. And because like that just gets to my idea of like, this is a marketing problem. And we've had a year now to think of like a marketing scheme. And so over a year, we haven't been able to clearly articulate what concrete additional opportunities students are gonna have in our schools. We've had a year and we have no actual proposals. I hear people asking us to come up with the proposals and that's fine. But I would hope that if like, with something at this scale, that there would be concrete things on the table that people would actually be able to vote on. And even if that were eco in all the schools, and even if that were additional STEM program, and even if that were foreign languages, or a foreign language, that's as broad as you could be. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we still have no information on how people's tax bills are going to benefit from this sort of a plan. So we have no way of knowing how students are going to benefit. We have no way of knowing how our taxes are going to be affected. And I haven't heard a good story about when this happened somewhere else and it turned out great. So like, I'm just looking for, I would be happy with a story. I would be happy with some concrete, like this is what we are going to do. This is what is on the table. And this is how you are going to benefit as a taxpayer.
Ask Roxbury.
And so like, I would just employ, I would employ the administration and the board to really think about like, what are the concrete things that you can put on the table for people to actually chew on. I've heard tons of questions here. I have no idea how people are going to get the answers to any of them. And I just think that it's so important that people feel heard, that they feel like their questions are valued. The way to do that is to answer them. And I don't know how that's going to happen, but I look forward to seeing how it does.
Thank you, Ben. So Caitlin remembered what she wanted to say, and then Lauren gets the last word, and then I'm going to turn into a pumpkin.
So I appreciated that it was Noah who said, you know, if we were to put this to a vote to the towns where we have a year to prepare and plan and answer questions, a request that I would want to bring to the board in that is if there is the next year is still status quo with the plan of them moving ahead, to appropriately fund Doty in the interim, maybe not by student, if we're losing the sixth graders, let's say, or if we have a small class, to make sure that our students in that 1 year, with a commitment for 1 year, that we have enough financially to do what we need to do, so that Gillian feels comfortable and the teachers feel supported, and the community knows that if we're taking this big leap on behalf of the district, in the meantime, we are supported as we need to be.
Lauren?
Thanks. I'll be brief. I wrote this down earlier and it still stands and connects with what a few people just said, and about the trust and lack of information. And I'll speak for myself. I have been doing this for the last few years, and if I'm being asked to vote to close Doty, I need to know that I'm voting for something better than what I currently have. And it goes to, I can't see who was speaking over there, but I would say it's almost like a political campaign, right? I need all the information to know what I'm voting for, and I need to know that what I'm going to get is better than what I have right now. And right now I have zero confidence. I have no information to base that on. And if the timeline is just like early December is a few weeks away, we're not far from that. It's almost like I need a budget, I need the plans for the schools, I need to know what a robust middle school program looks like for sixth grade at U32. I need a lot of information to feel like I'm gonna vote, I know what I'm voting for and that I'm gonna get something better out of it.
So that brings, thank you all, first of all, for being here, for staying here, for all of your comments and your thoughts. It's incredibly important. I wish I could say I knew what was happening with the configuration committee after this, but I don't know. I think that we've been asked to be involved, but what that looks like, I don't know. So I kind of want to turn it over to the board members and Gillian for whatever the next step is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, can I just say one thing? Can I just say one thing in closing? No? Yes? Yes. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but in answer to Ben's question, comments, I know we don't have a lot of answers, but some things I see as a parent as a clear win that I think is included in this proposal is full-time nursing, full-time counseling, and before and after school care at each of the schools. That's what I have. So those were huge for me and for someone who struggled with the budget for the past couple of years, and those issues are important to you all, I know too. So those are some huge ones. I don't have an elementary school example, but I think U32 is a beautiful example of when communities came together and created a community school, and it worked really well. But so I do think there are some concrete pros to this.
The kids are a lot older than you.
Again, I do think there are some concrete pros that are lined out in this. And there are a lot of unknowns. I recognize that, and I know that, yes, marketing is not marketing.
All right, and I apologize, I'm walking around. I have to go pick up a kid and get him home so he can be functioning for tomorrow. But I just want to thank all of you for coming out and continuing to come out. This is my community, and I love it. And, I know I represent the whole district, but I really appreciate all of your feedback because I really do take it very seriously when I'm making decisions as a board member because I care just as deeply about your kids as you do. I went through this school, I went through 32, my kid is going through 32, and there's something really special about here. And I don't want us to lose that, whatever that looks like. Whether it's staying in this building or going into another building, I will do my best to try and make sure that we can maintain what makes Worcester so magical. So, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Michaela.
Yeah, thank you all.
So I will also wrap up with, I did print up some copies of the memo, and I will send it out electronically also, and it gives a sense of the capacity.
And I'll echo what Natasha said, and one thing, what brought me to Doty was the community, and I knew I'd made the right choice when I came to the play, and it felt like the whole town was here.
Yeah.
Because the whole town was here. And my, I have to set goals every year, and mine is, one of mine is keeping a steady hand on the tiller, and no matter what happens, is to bring, the magic of Doty is in the people. It is in the town of Worcester. It's not in the building, it's in the people who come to it. And if this goes through, I will do my darndest to bring that magic wherever it goes, because the magic is you. It's not the building, it's you. And I'm incredibly honored and grateful to serve this community. And it breaks my heart when I had to accept that the numbers weren't bouncing back up. It breaks my heart, because Worcester has my heart, and it always will. So thank you all for coming out.
Thank you.